Hey there everybody, you guys know I am a huge fan of Rivendell, so today's shop visit is a huge treat. We are here at Rivendell HQ, and we're get the tour by Grant himself. So thanks for giving us a tour.
Oh, sure.
I'm so nervous, Grant. This is like the pinnacle of our trip right here.
Oh man, there is nothing to be nervous about. And that puts a lot of pressure
On you or me?
on me.
On you.
Yeah. We have 6 units here. They're each 24 by 40, so we have roughly 6,000 square feet. We're the biggest tenant in this building, and most of it's car, auto body stuff and car places, but we're the bicycle people. This is our showroom. The other rooms are just storage and office stuff and
all the exciting stuff.
and shop where we do the bike assembly. This is a great way to display the bikes. It works well for us. We have customer bikes, employee bikes, prototypes, old bikes.
Do you have any prototypes in the rack right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. This is sort of like the platypus bike, but we use Roscoe Bubby sort of as a catch-all name for small production run bikes.
How many iterations do you usually go through in the prototyping phase before you settle on the final design?
2 or 3 actual metal prototypes, and there may be 8 or 10 detail changes on drawings.
Okay.
And then we test them and ride them thoroughly because we want to know more about our bikes than the people who buy them.
Right.
So we have to do that. So the things that we look for, we always look for tire clearances. You know, we try to get good clearance around the side of the tire here in case the wheel wobbles. And we try to get a similar clearance. We try to match clearances. Vertical clearances above the tire and lateral clearances around the tire. On the fork and on the seat stays and chain stays.
I think when I first discovered Rivendell, you had more kind of traditional diamond style frames, and now it's a whole variety of shapes. Was there like an aha moment where you decided to explore other kind of shapes of bikes?
Well, we started off with 1.5 degree upsloping top tubes. You know, the whole idea is that you don't ride a frame, you ride on the contact point. So you've got your pedals and the saddle height, and then wherever you're grabbing the handlebars, and that can change according to the shape of the handlebar. You know, we don't do high saddles, low bars, aerodynamic positions. When I see a bike set up with a high saddle and a low bar, that's a bike posed for a photograph. That's how we used to do it in the Bridgestone catalogs too.
Right.
You know, jack up the saddle and lower the bar and put you in this cheetah sprinting position, but nobody rides like that. I mean, not our customers, nobody here. I mean, not even Mark rides that much like that. I mean, probably more than anybody else. As we're sitting around standing, we have sort of erect backs and stuff, and when you sit down at a table, you have that, and when you walk, you have that, and even when you run, sprinters may start off on the blocks leaning forward, but you know, as soon as they're out of the blocks, you know, they're pretty much upright. They're leaning forward, I don't know, 5 degrees or something.
Yeah.
It's weird that bicycle riders are leaned over so much, and that the classical position, the position that you see that is supposed to exemplify performance and experience and speed, is a position that most people are not comfortable with and puts a lot of weight on their hands. So we don't sell racing bikes. I mean, racers can do whatever they want. You know, we don't try to influence racers, but more importantly, we aren't influenced by racing dogma, classic stuff like that. You know, we have sort of classical tube proportions and joinery with lugs and some TIG welding and all that. So there's a classical look to the bike. And because of that, sometimes people see our bikes and think that they're homages to the past or something you know, like that, and they aren't at all. I mean, we want people to be comfortable on bikes and to use them as daily transportation. We don't have any hierarchy where racing's at the top.
And then somewhere down here is commuting.
Yeah, like licensed racing, and then weekend warring. Yeah, and then commuting is always at the bottom. And so it's common for people to come in and say, well, I'm not going to race or anything, or I'm not going to do this or anything. Our customers are just, I think, regular people who like to ride bikes.
I think one of the challenges with your bikes is that they don't fall into those clean kind of categories that the industry has made. It's not like a road bike or a mountain bike. It's just this weird kind of thing that serves both. Do you find that to be the case?
I mean, even a Bridgestone, you know, when we came out with the XO1, showed it at a trade show, you know, for dealers, and everyone wanted to know what kind of bike it was, what category it fell into. Our categories are sort of road bikes, and a road bike for us is a tire that takes, a bike that takes tires up to at least 35 millimeters with a fender. Then we had like mountain bikes early on, sort of split the difference with something that we called back in 2005 even, country bikes. Mm-hmm. Country bikes are now sort of gravel bikes. Our mountain bikes, we call them hilly bikes right now, and this is sort of creating a category or something, but we don't do mountain bikes with suspension, we don't do them with disc brakes or anything like that. So when you say mountain bikes, it conjures up an image of the kind of bike that we don't do. So it
sets up expectations.
Yeah.
Well, let's carry on with the tour. What's this looks like? Is this product pickup for customers that are in town? Yeah,
customers can pick up stuff, so the invoices are there. One of our customers did this watercolor of a camera.
Nice.
We're going to get a new bandana, a bunch of lugs on it.
Cool.
And this is the prototype of the bandana. No changes on the prototype. We're going to keep it like that. A bunch of photographs around. There's a Goins poster that we have.
I think one thing that that you guys are known for is that early on you were selling kind of bike adjacent interesting products like, you know, hatchets, Trangia sets. Mm-hmm. What made you want to do that?
I like stuff other than bikes. I don't like
you do?
anything as much as. But I think a lot of people do. I'm going to try to make this really short, but I sort of want to get beyond the Bridgestone years. But the fact is, you know, I did work there for a while, and my time there influenced my view of bikes and the market and all that kind of stuff. In the last 10 months or so of Bridgestone, we started this thing called the Bridgestone Owners Bunch. And Bridgestone was just losing all kinds of money. And the Bridgestone Owners Bunch, we had a small budget. It had to be profitable, and we ended up selling bikes direct because dealers weren't buying them, so we sold them direct. We got money before. We didn't have to give terms. We got money cash before delivery, mm-hmm. which was wonderful. And then we started selling, you know, the last of the horsehide baseballs ever made. You know, we sold a few other books, and I was just looking for interesting things to sell to this sort of select group of people. Mm-hmm. And they sold, and the Bridgestone Owners Bunch was profitable, and it helped us make payroll there. And so it was kind of fun because I could indulge myself a little bit with some non-bike stuff, and we had a small little team there. Yeah. In the marketing department. It's sort of I proved that it worked there to me, and it was fun, so we did it here too. And in the early days of Rivendell, it was necessary to get, you know, whatever we could get. Right. To sell, and the emphasis has always been on bicycles, and now bicycles carry us. Without bicycles, we don't have a business, but I'd still like to get some of the other fun things. I feel like more bike shops are doing that now, but you guys were definitely the first that I was aware of where, you know, you could get kind of these interesting bike adjacent stuff that fit that similar lifestyle or aesthetic. I don't know if you viewed it as a purely marketing thing or it was your genuine interest, but it seemed to be cutting edge at the time. I think it's good that companies do that. I mean, bicycles should be, you bring them into your life, into a life that already has other things and other interests in it, you know, so. So we've got the showroom, people can pick up stuff. What's in the case back here? Doodads. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people give us cameras, sometimes the cameras work. If they don't work, We can still put them in there because like a manual film camera is an interesting looking thing. It's a beautiful object. And we've got some lugs and some soap. And if there were no COVID around, we would probably use this more and embellish it more, spiff it up a little bit. It's not like people come here to look at all the groovy stuff on the walls and that are on display. I mean, that would be my dream to do that.
What's on the table there with all the lugs and stuff?
Yeah, there's some lugs, a hatchet head. It got burned in a fire, and I think we gave the guy a new hatchet if he sent us the head. A hammer, and it gets used for tapping in things.
Nice.
And a bunch of lugs. So we've got like 45 or 50 different molds for various lugs and fork crowns. You know, lugs are beautiful things, and that's an interesting lug. And they reinforce joints.
So are these going on current models?
A lot of these are. This one is not on a current model right now. We get 3D printed versions of lugs.
So
if
what's
they're
it
correct?
What does it take to have a lug produced? Sounds like it's an expensive process.
It's not that hard, and it's not that expensive.
No?
No, it's remarkably easy and inexpensive, I think. If you're in contact with an investment caster, you know, who does lugs, they send you a drawing of one of their lugs, you know, or this is assuming you're starting from scratch. You know, you see the different views of the lugs, you change the contours with a pencil and white out or whatever you've got there. This is, you know, if you don't have the CAD file for it, and they aren't going to send you that, you can just say, I want a lug sort of like this, but I don't want a point there, I want a round spoon there, I want it to be kind of easy to braze, so you have a big window there. And I want the side view, I want it to look interesting. A lot of the things with lugs is that, I mean, the way I think about it is I want somebody in 50 years to be able to look at one of our bikes and think, somebody cared about that piece, somebody,
Right.
I mean, there was some thought that went into it. It's not just a simple joint, a simple generic joint. If it has this lug on it, even if the bike has no decals on it, then it means that it's our bike, and
Right.
somebody could probably look that up.
So what's this partial frame here? Oh, it's cut in half.
Yeah, cut in half. This was made in Japan by a company called Toyo. It has a really beautiful joint here. I think it was cut in half in America, and then we just showed
How the tube sits in the lug. And
how it goes in there. You know, and a lot of people have no idea how thin tubes actually are. Like
right.
this tube here is 0.6 of a millimeter thick, and that's ridiculously thin. And yet, if you go to 0.8,
Right.
it reads thicker than it is. You know,
Huh.
I mean, and people will look at a tube and they have no idea how thin the walls actually are. And on our bikes, you know, we try to have a comfortable wall thickness. We don't want the bike to just barely hold together. We want it to have a little bit of a cushion.
When people throw out numbers like 868 or something, it's a reference to.
Yeah, that's 0.8, 0.6, 0.8. And on our top tubes, typically these days, it's 0.9 here for about 100 millimeters, and then 0.7.
Okay.
On our top tube, this is maybe too much detail and just my opinion, but top tubes are typically double butted. I mean, in the classic frame, and it could be 0.8, 0.5, 0.8. But this joint is stressed more than this joint. Mm-hmm. So you don't really need, just for strength, this to be 0.8. You need a certain amount of thickness to soak up the heat of brazing. Mm. But we tend to do like 0.7 here because this is like the least stressed joint on the frame right here, and this whole part of the tube. Then we have a little bit thicker in here, so it's thinner here, thicker here, and it's thicker there just so if the handlebar swings around, it's a little bit more dent resistant.
Right, just won't like crumple right there.
Yeah.
So what's I mean, these numbers sound pretty small, like in terms of weight savings. When someone specs out like a really like thin tube set, are they actually saving that much weight?
No, the difference between, say, what I would consider too light for us and what most people would consider too heavy for them,
right,
is maybe 2 ounces in a tube, or an ounce and a half, depending.
Okay, yeah.
So it's really not that much. And then you add them up. You know, with lugs add more weight than TIG welding, for example, and brazons and all that. And if you want to have a certain amount of cushion in the frame, just resistance to injury from running into the back of a car or whatever, you know, you'll end up with a frame that weighs a pound, 2 pounds, sometimes 3 pounds more if it's a big trail bike. But that's still a small percentage of the total weight of the rider and the frame. The weight difference is less than 2% between a heavy frame and a light frame of the overall complete bike and typical rider weight on it.
What else we got?
Well, here's what we got. These are 3D printings of part of a derailleur that we're working on.
Oh yeah, the derailleur.
Yeah.
Should we go into that now?
Sure, we can go into it now.
What's with the derailleur? Like, why go through that process?
Personally, I think that the best designed derailleurs ever were the Shimano's Rapid Rise derailleurs of the early 90s and then later the early 2000s. They failed in the market because people didn't like the idea of having to move the shifter the other way to get the low gear or something.
Right.
But it's so easy, and I have bikes with normal and Rapid Rise derailleurs on them, and it's so easy. If you can eat spaghetti with a fork without stabbing yourself in the cheek, then you can adapt to a Rapid Rise. But nobody makes them anymore, and Shimano doesn't make them anymore. And if Shimano did make them, then we certainly wouldn't be trying to make one. I don't think people are going to care about this, but I'll just tell you. In a normal derailleur, the rear derailleur, if you cut the cable, if you relax the cable, it defaults. The spring pulls it to the hard gear, to the small cog. And in this other kind, when you relax the cable, it defaults to the
easy gear.
And so with the Rapid Rise derailleur, with conventional shifters, they aren't conventional anymore, but let's say with bar end shifters, you would push them in the same direction to get the same effect. Always the left one, you push it forward, and front derailleur kicks it down to the granny. In a Rapid Rise derailleur, when you push the lever forward, it kicks it to the small gear. Mm-hmm. So easy, hard, that's the motion.
Right.
And it works a similar way with down tube shifters or thumb shifters. So it's intuitively it's easier. But from a practical point of view, if you're shifting in friction, which nobody does, but a lot of our customers still do, and I still do, it's an easier shift. You're never desperate to get a harder gear.
That's true.
You're desperate for the easy gears. You know, you're going uphill. You go down a trail, then you're going up a steep thing across on the other side of the creek or whatever, and you lose momentum so fast. You want that gear. And a Rapid Rise derailleur gets you that gear more easily and more securely. If you only shift in index, then you don't know what ghost shifting is. But if you've ridden bikes for a long enough time, everyone has gone up a hill and had the shifter lever slip a little bit, and then it
goes into the harder.
It goes into the harder gear. Well, in a Rapid Rise derailleur, if it slips, if it ghost shifts to an easier gear.
Yeah.
Which, who cares? Thank you very much.
Right. Also, I think if you suffer some kind of mechanical, to me it would seem like it would be nice that it defaults to an easier gear.
Yeah.
So you can
if you
spin
break
home.
a cable, you're in the low gear.
Right.
And that's not bad at all. Have you ever used a Rapid Rise derailleur?
I've not.
Do you have a bike that you would put one on if somebody gave one to you for free?
Yes, I would actually.
Okay. That will never be proved, but you will walk away with one.
So where are you guys in the process? You're still 3D printing. What's your hope that you guys would shepherd the process of its manufacturing, or someone else would take it on?
The design is complete right now. It works. In contact with one derailleur maker and one bicycle parts maker, 2 different people. One is in China, one is in Taiwan. But these are places that are really experienced, really smart, really good at making things, and have made parts for brands that I won't name. They know how to do their stuff. And we submitted CAD files for them, complete drawing things, so that they knew what they were looking at. We explained these things to them, and they're taking us seriously. So this morning in an email I got a little video, a 3D printed prototype that seems to be functioning perfectly. And if we approve it, then they will make us one that we can put on a bike. Maybe they'll print it out of metal.
Right.
And eventually it'll be made with a combination of machining, forging, casting, you know, whatever makes sense for it. And I don't know how expensive it's going to be or how cheap it's going to be. Or
Do you have what kind of tooth capacity is it gonna? Are you guys designing around?
Well, you know, with those tab extenders, you can do anything. But you know, without a tab extender and a typical dropout, it'll probably go to 36 teeth or 40 teeth or something like that.
Cool. Yeah.
Even Shimano rear derailleurs, you know, I mean, I have one rated to 34 teeth, and I have it on bike that I have a 42. So Shimano, I think, at one point they said, well, in friction you can do that, but in indexing, you know, you should stick with the listed specs. But a lot of times you can go beyond them. But that's what we're going for. And we want it to be, ideally it would be a really nice looking derailleur. And I don't know how much we'll compromise that, but I don't want to do an expensive piece of art that nobody buys or nobody takes seriously.
So you guys have had the concept of the country bike around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reaction when gravel bikes were becoming a thing?
Well, you know, I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, big picture, another kind of bike. The thing is, a gravel bike is just a really practical bike.
Right.
It's a practical road bike, and you can ride on trails. So I'm all for the category. We don't use the term gravel bikes here because it lumps us in with other bikes that are a lot different from what we consider a practical road bike or a country bike.
So it seems like, within the last couple of years, there's been kind of a renewed interest in Riv. You know, you'll put up a frame and it sells out, you know, within the hour or within the day. Is that unexpected, or what's going on there?
We have sold 130 bikes in 8 minutes before. And the first time, it was hard to believe that it was happening. It's not a happy event, really, because what it means is that this bike that took us 14 months to get sells out in 7 minutes. And then it's going to be another 9 months, maybe, if we already have another order for a run of those, before we get that bike again. And in the meantime, we have to say no to a lot of people who want the bike. But when there's a scarcity of bikes, and people know there's a scarcity, it just creates this sort of feeding frenzy.
Right.
It makes for really good days, really good weeks, maybe a really good week. And then after that, it's back to normal. Break even for us is about $6,000 to $7,000 a day, a deposit. If we have a week of $3,000 days, that means we've lost $30,000.
Right.
And we still have expenses, payroll, other bills coming in. A good day, like on a big frame day, you know, it might be, you know, $60,000 to $90,000. But it just averages out over time.
When did you guys start seeing that response to the frames? Was it during COVID? All of a sudden, people were kind of having this mad rush to buy bikes, or was it before?
Well, the mad rush is COVID, but we started selling in 1995, the first frames, and up to about 2006. Almost nobody had heard of us, you know, even locally, you know, we'd be riding the bikes around here, nobody knew what they were. So that was like almost a decade of anonymity, and we're trying to, from about 2010 on, it's been a lot of word of mouth. A normal customer of ours, they'll buy one bike, and then they'll buy another bike in a different category, or they'll buy a bike for a spouse, or they'll recommend it to a friend. So we're really lucky in that way that people like the bikes enough to sometimes get more than one of them. I mean, if you like bikes, well, just like if you like anything, you have more than one of them. If
Right.
you like photography, you have more than one camera. You know, we don't ever sit down and think, what can we design and then create a demand for, and how do we do that? We absolutely never do that. All the bikes that we have are bikes that we personally want to exist. This is a prototype of a road bike that we're going to have called the Charly H Gallop. And we already have slightly more traditional road bikes. We have the Rodeo and we have a Rodini, and they both have straight tubes and all that. But this one, it's got this droop tube here, and that just allows more crotch clearance, so somebody can ride a bigger frame than they would ordinarily ride and get the handlebars higher. It's got these massively long chain stays.
Yeah, this is at least a country mile, right?
You know, and like a lot of road bikes, you know, you can fit a finger in there
Right.
with a 28. This is a 42. You could almost fit a boxing glove in there. You know, with a longer wheelbase, it just stabilizes it, just like a longer skateboard, a longer surfboard, a longer car,
Right.
a longer kayak, canoe, anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't wiggle as much, so it's more stable. It's smoother as it goes down the road. And a lot of people think, well, that's got to come at a cost. You know, it's got to be hard to maneuver, hard to go around a tight turn on. No, absolutely not. It's easy, and so this is it was an experiment. It's the way that we wanted to do a bike.
Yeah.
And it's not really taking the place of our more conventional bikes, which are really nice also. But this has some advantages.
So this is still a prototype?
It's a prototype, yeah.
When's this model gonna come out?
2023, maybe spring.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got a lug there, and this is TIG welded with a fillet over it. And we always try to have nice fork crowns.
Right.
Well, we do have nice fork crowns. And slender blades with a nice curve at the bottom.
Yeah.
Try to have details like that, and then braze-ons for easy racking, and we do kickstand plates also, so
Nice.
you know, you can do that.
Yeah.
Sort of an anti-racing detail on the bike.
Yeah. Like on the kind of unracer front, I feel like there's finally some momentum behind it.
Yeah.
You know, you have personalities like, you know, Ron, Ultra Romance, you know, Crust, you know, like kind of what we do on the channel. But there's actually like recognized people that are pinning numbers on that are kind of starting to, you know, make their own waves in the bike industry.
Yeah, well, that's as it should be. And all those other companies, you know, Crust and Surly are certainly, you know, far out there, you know, at the front of it. But I think it's great. In Europe, people always rode bikes practically. People just getting around, you know, those are old stories. I don't need to tell people that they ride bikes like that in Copenhagen or anything. But in the United States, you know, bikes were for kids and they were for racers. And we never had this middle practical ground.
Right.
So when people started getting into bikes, the only adult bike was a racer. The only respectable way to ride a bike was in a racing mode, a drop bar handle bike where you wear cleats and you dress aerodynamically and you go out there and you do long, hard rides to nowhere, or you know, high-speed weekend rides where you're trying to beat your friends. And you know, that's not using a bike to its potential. That's one way to ride a bike. And the thing about bikes is you can ride them any single way that you want. You don't have to ride the Grant Peterson way or anything like that. You know, you can do you can use them for travel, entertainment, health, fun, fitness, exploring, shopping, commuting, all that kind of thing. So that's the kind of bike that we like to do. And right now, just as you said, it's popular to do that. You don't have to be ashamed to have a basket on your bike. I'd say you're insane not to have at least one bike without a basket on it because they're so useful. And so there's these upright bar things. People used to associate upright bars with kids or unserious riding. And yet you put an upright bar on a bike and just turns it into a magnificent beast.
Right.
And then you put a basket on there with a net on it and a bag in there. And there's lots of great bags being made right now too. There's so many good things, you know, happening with bicycles that weren't happening even 10 years ago.
Right.
Certainly not 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago. But right now it's sort of reaching a normalcy that I never would have guessed. And it's fantastic. So see any of those other companies doing those kinds of bikes as competition, I'm just rah for everybody doing that.
Yeah, and I feel like you know, a lot of the owners of those companies have been greatly influenced by you in the past, and they're just at that, you know, point in their lives where they can start their own brands and, you know, have their own products made.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, you know, and that's just a natural way that things happen. I was influenced by Richard Sachs. I was influenced by Tom Ritchie. I was influenced by a guy named Peter Johnson. You know, I had influences, and then I sort of took those, and they gave me a direction or some values, and then I sort of, you know, made it work for me and added some differences. You know, but it's all good stuff. But there's so many different kinds of bicycles, and most of them are pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know our channel is deeply influenced by Riv. You know, part of the reason I got into fly fishing was I think I stumbled upon an article that you'd written in the Riv Reader about bamboo fly rods. I was like, oh, that sounds like such a romantic thing to do on a bike.
Well, thank you. I didn't know that, and I find that delightful and happy making.
So what is going to be the future of Rivendell? Where do you see it going? You know, like you know, are you gonna probably leave it at some point? You know, what do you want Rivendell to do in the future?
Well, I'm 67 now. It's been around for about 28 years. I've never enjoyed work more than I do now. I've never enjoyed riding more than I do now. I wish I were 40 years younger, 50 years younger, but I feel like I'm healthy. And I love the people that I work with. I want to provide good jobs and a good future for them. I don't have any plans to retire, but practically, you know, I would like to see Will and Vince and James and Antonio and Sergio and, you know, the younger people sort of continue it, not as my legacy or anything like that. I would totally be happy being anonymous. But I want them to continue to have good work, make more money, have more autonomy, even though they're young. And when I say young, I'm talking about late 20s to 34. They have a depth of knowledge and historical knowledge that of bikes that were made 10 years before they were born. So, and yet they know about these bikes. You know, they know how stuff works, and so that's really it bodes well for the future, I think, of Rivendell.
Cool. Well, thanks, Grant, so much for your time, for the tour, and, you know, a little bit about you know, some bike nerdery about the design. We have a lot of content.
Well, thanks for coming down. Thanks for the opportunity and for making it easy.
All right, will do. If you guys like this video, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. You guys know where to find Rivendell. They have a website. They have Instagrams. I don't think you guys are on TikTok. No. And as always, everybody, keep the supple side down.